My grandma was a school teacher in a one-room schoolhouse in southern Indiana, and she had a little bell, and she'd ring it. She was only about this big. She said even her third and fourth graders were bigger than she was. I remember saying, I'd ring that bell, and I'd ring that bell. Okay, we usually put our antique quilts on the bed because we consider them fragile, for one thing, and we just like to give them the honor that they're due for being 50 years old. Usually, yeah, we got a couple. Eloise isn't quite that old. This is hers.
I did the math.
Yeah, you did the math? Okay. This is Eloise's quilt, and I'm going to let her tell you about it.
I call this a nursery rhyme quilt. These little blocks were pre-printed, and a friend of my family gave them to me. My mother was in the hospital when I was 8, and my aunt thought I needed something to do, so she taught me to embroider, and I did finish them right away. I was probably 14 before I finished it. Then they went in a box, and while I was at college, my mother made a baby quilt out of it.
Unfortunately, she had all boys, so she didn't get to use it for her kids.
This little pillow is made with yo-yos. It's from feed sack fabric, and it was probably made in the 1940s by my aunt, Nellie Church.
Our first large bed quilt is called, it's a cross stitch, and I'm not sure, it's just, I don't know if that's a farmer in little houses or what. I guess we can figure it out. It is owned by Andrew and Julie Bentley. It was cross-stitched by Mary M. Ritchie and hand-quilted by Mrs. D.E. Ritchie. And it was given to Andrew and Julie in 2003 when they got married. So we're estimating, it's probably close, 50 years old or older. And it was, you can see the beautiful hand-quilted. This quilt is called a pansy quilt. It's owned by Margaret Bentley. It was pieced by Mary Ritchie and quilted by Mrs. D.E. Ritchie. It was hand appliqued and hand quilted, and it was given to Margaret in 1961 by her mother and her grandmother because they moved into a new house and they thought that she should have a new quilt. So, it has quilted like in a feather type design, and yeah, it's got a little something on there. This is owned by Margaret Bentley, and it is hand-pieced and hand-quilted by Mrs. D.E. Ritchie. She says it's a postage stamp, but it's also a trip around the world. It was hand-pieced and hand-quilted and given to Margaret's father in 1929 when he got married. So, very good, very good condition. And you can tell the older the quilts, you just don't have, the backing is a little bit more rough. Use sheets. They say it's hard to quilt through sheets. This is a basket quilt, and it's owned by Red Cheney. It was machine pieced and hand quilted by Sarah Greer in the 30s or 40s. That's the 40s or 50s. 40s or 50s. I can't read my own writing. And you can tell that because of the bubblegum pink and this lavender and the blues are typical fabrics of that era. And it was given to Red by her grandmother when she went off to college. And it was using feed sacks and scrap fabrics.
This one's heavier.
Yeah. This is also owned by Red Cheney. She didn't know what the pattern is, and we're pretty sure it's called the Crossroads. It was made in the 40s or 50s. It was hand-pieced and hand-quilted, and it was given to Rhett when she went off to college. And you can tell the fabrics, are feed sacks, quilted in the fan design. This is my favorite this year. and it's called Grandmother's Flower Garden. This is hand-pieced and hand-quilted. It's owned by Betty Bristol, and it was quilted, hand-pieced and hand-quilted by Margaret Bristol, Betty's mother-in-law. And when Betty passed away, or when Margaret passed away, Betty got it. But each of these little hexagons is hand-pieced, one next to another. I'd be bonkers before I got one block done. Wait till you see the back of this. Were you bonkers? Look at the quilting on the back. By the time she pieced all those hexagons, and then she quilted around it, and it's perfect. This is a snowball quilt, and it's owned by Betty Bristol. It was quilted, hand-pieced and hand-quilted by Rose Bishop's, Betty's husband's grandmother. Try saying that 3 times. And she inherited it when Rose passed away. And it's feed sacks, you know, probably in your 30s and 40s. I don't know, you've got that backing and that. This is a summer coverlet. When they would get the quilts off the beds to air them out, they would put these sheets that they would embroider. It's owned by Katie Nidifer, and her mother did this. And she would do matching dresser scarves to go with the sheets that she would put on the bed. And she also has this sewing machine. I don't think it's a Singer. Yeah. Is it a Singer? Yeah, the Singer Manufacturing Company. It was patented April 13th, 1886. And this is a Dresden plate, and it's owned by Judy Blevins. And it was hand-appliqued, hand-pieced by her mother, Astor Stagner, and it's between 70 and 80 years old. And the thing with this, she says she's never going to quilt it probably, because when you have an old top, unless you can find the old backing and batting, that quilt is no longer an antique. It's going to only be as old as the newest fabric that you have in it. And the other thing that we always try to tell people is that you've got them in a cedar chest. You need to have something between the quilt and the cedar chest, because we've got one here, as you can see this one here, the oil from the cedar wood will wick up into your quilt. So you want to have like paper on the bottom, not newspaper. Yeah, not newspaper, like tissue paper. Put them in, because the newspaper will come through your quilt. Put them in a pillowcase. Don't store them in the rain. Yeah, don't store them in the plastic. As your temperatures go up and down, your quilt is going to sweat. It's not going to breathe, and then you're going to have a moldy quilt that's going to start rotting. So what I did when I always tell everyone, I threw my kids out of the house. When they graduated and went their own way, I took one of the bedrooms and I put a bed in there, and I have all of my quilts laid out. My wall hangings, everything that I make that I don't have on the walls goes on that bed. Like this. Yeah. And I have a sheet, and I keep a sheet or 2 sheets depending on how long the quilts are. And I keep them covered like that so that they can breathe, they keep the bedroom window open a little bit. And then you don't have the batting breaks. A lot of quilts, you'll see that because they're folded, you can see that you've got a fold line here, and that starts breaking the batting that you have in the quilt when you do the old batting. It doesn't pop back. You can do it. Pardon me? I use some of it, I don't use all of it at the same time. These old time ones you wouldn't be using on your bed. No. I've got one that my great-grandmother made, and it was like 1880 something. And my grandmother used it because when she was in the nursing home, because it made her feel safe and secure. Unfortunately, when Grandma passed away, she was under that quilt, and my aunt decided she was going to wash it. She threw it in the washing machine, and it just totally, how old was it? Because my grandmother was born in 19. Yeah, we're 50 years old.